I literally sat down thinking I'll riffle through this and give her an endorsement quote so I can get it off my to-do list. And like 2 hours later, I'm still turning the pages and I finished and I went, oh my God, this book is amazing. It is a true story about a young boy named Christian Haupt who was born with a natural talent for baseball. At the age of 2, Christian began sharing memories of a past life as a baseball player.
Mommy, I used to be a tall baseball player.
Yeah, one day you're going to be a tall baseball player.
No, I was a tall baseball player. Tall like Daddy.
Do you remember how you died?
My body stopped working.
And then what happened?
I became Christian.
How you
My
died?
body stopped. I became Christian. I picked her to be my mommy.
Do you remember where you were when you chose her?
In the sky.
Distraught by her son's uncanny revelations, Christian's mother, Kathy, embarked on a sacred journey of discovery that would shake her beliefs to the core and forever change her views on life and death.
I might have been given a bad break, but I've got an awful lot to live for. Thank you.
Beautifully written, with integrity and humor, this gripping story might change the way you choose to play this game called life.
Do you believe in past lives? It's a story that's so extraordinary, many still have trouble believing it. But we're going to let you judge for yourself.
When Christian was 1 year old, he saw our neighborhood kids playing baseball and became so fascinated that he wore a baseball uniform every day. He would play inside of the house, he would throw balls at the wall.
First time I started playing baseball, it just felt really natural.
We are not a baseball family, so it really was very odd. He was 3 years old and throwing and catching a ball like an 8-year-old. I took Christian to see a professional baseball game. We were walking through the stadium in Boston and he saw this big picture of Babe Ruth.
I don't like Babe Ruth.
He got so upset saying, I don't like him, he was mean to me. That's when I had an inkling that something was going on. I started to look into the internet, into the idea of reincarnation and children, and I took photographs from Babe Ruth's era and said, do you see anyone here that doesn't like Babe Ruth? And he immediately pointed to a player with dimples. He said, that's me. And the man who he pointed to was Lou Gehrig. To have him say these things, it was actually very disturbing, and I was concerned. As time went by, he continued to say things, but the one thing that really got me, I was in an elevator with him, and he said, when I was a tall baseball player, I used to stay in hotels almost every night. And I said, did you fly on airplanes? And he said, no, mostly trains. And he'd never been on a train or played with a train, so it was really, really odd to me. When he was about 6 years old, we went to Lou Gehrig's grave. He said, Mommy, God gave me a new brain now. It's hard for me to remember. It was as if it faded away like a dream.
I'm not really thinking about it anymore. Now I'm focusing on my life and playing baseball.
It's not like we go through our lives thinking that he was Lou Gehrig. We're very much just living a normal life. But when he does want to talk about it, I just wanted him to know as a mother that I was listening and that I was acknowledging what he had to say.
Christian joins us along with his mother, Kathy. And this is so fascinating. And first of all, you're a pretty good baseball player, aren't you?
Yeah.
Comes pretty naturally?
Yeah.
Is baseball your favorite sport?
Yeah.
What do you want to be when you grow up?
A baseball player for the Dodgers.
Nice, Dodger blue. As a mom, I cannot even fathom trying to put this together in your brain when your child is telling you these things.
Yeah, it has been quite a journey. And when Christian first started sharing these stories with us with very specific memories of things that turned out to be historically accurate, and they were things that we could have never known, he could have never known, that I didn't even know. I had to look it up on the computer. I didn't believe in reincarnation, right? It wasn't something that was part of my belief system. So it really was quite a journey to figure it out. You know, to be honest with you, in my book that I wrote, I recently wrote a book called The Boy Who Knew Too Much. And I don't really come to that conclusion. I really just provide the evidentiary moments, what occurred in our life, and I kind of leave it up to the reader to interpret it, because what came through the most was evidence that our souls survive this earthly existence and that love can surpass one lifetime.
And you didn't really know who Lou Gehrig was, right?
No.
And your husband didn't?
No, my husband's from Germany. Ironically from the same town that Lou Gehrig's parents immigrated from.
So not a baseball player?
No, a tennis player.
I think if nothing else, it just forces us to think outside of ourselves. And this power in the universe, who knows? You can't explain everything that happens. And I'm really also happy that you brought this book, and you have a surprise, I understand, for our audience.
I do. So each member of the audience is going to get a free copy of the book. Thank you.
Well, Christian, regardless of all the things that happened to you when you were young, you're living your own life now, and we can't wait to follow along. Good luck with everything you do in this world, my friend. We'll be right back.
Σήμερα θα μιλήσουμε για τις αναμνήσεις από προηγούμενες ζωές. Στην αρχαιοελληνική φιλοσοφία και ειδικότερα στους προσοκρατικούς φιλοσόφους, όπως τον Ηράκλειτο, με το αΐζο πυρ, και σε άλλους όμως, όπως τον Εμπεδοκλή, τον Αναξαγόρα, η προύπαρξη των ψυχών ήταν προϋπόθεση της ύπαρξης αιώνιων κόσμων και όντων. Ο Πυθαγόρας στη θεωρία του περί μετεμψύχωσης στήριξε όλο το περί αθανασίας και μέλουσας ζωής σύστημά του. Ο ίδιος ισχυριζόταν ότι είχε ανάμνηση των προηγούμενων ζωών του. Ο Σωκράτης επίσης υποστήριζε την προύπαρξη των ψυχών. Οι μαθητές του, Πλάτωνας και Αριστοτέλης, είναι τόσο επηρεασμένοι από την προύπαρξη, ώστε συχνά στα έργα τους διατυπώνουν και υπενήσονται τη θεωρία της μετενσάρκωσης προύπαρξης. Ο Πλάτωνας παρουσίασε λεπτομερείς περιγραφές μετεμψύχωσης στα κυριότερα έργα του, βάζοντας ακόμα και το Σωκράτη στο Φέδρο να λέει πως «Είμαι πεπισμένος πως υπάρχει αληθινά αυτό που λέμε «ζεις ξανά» και πως οι ζωντανοί προέρχονται από τους νεκρούς». Ο Πλάτωνας υπογράμμιζε ότι η ψυχή ενός αληθινού φιλοσόφου μπορεί να αποκτήσει ύστερα από 3.000 χρόνια και πάλι τα φτερά της και να ξαναγυρίσει εκεί που ανήκει. Ενώ για τις κοινές ψυχές απαιτείται διάστημα τουλάχιστον 10.000 ετών. Σύγχρονος του Πυθαγόρα, αφού έζησε και αυτός γύρω στο 600 π.Χ., ήταν ο Σιντάρτα Γκοντάμα, κοινώς ονομαζόμενος Βούδας. Το Βούδας, όπως ξέρετε, δεν είναι όνομα, είναι τίτλος που σημαίνει φωτισμένος. Και αυτή η όμορφη ασυνήθιστη εικόνα, με αρχαιοελληνικές επιρροές, όπως βλέπετε, είναι από το Μουσείο Ασιατικής Τέχνης στην Κέρκυρα. Ο οποίος Βούδας, υπήρξαν και άλλοι μετά από αυτόν βέβαια φωτισμένοι άνθρωποι, ανέλυσε και καθιέρωσε με πιστικότητα τη θεωρία της μετενσάρκωσης και της προύπαρξης των ψυχών. Οι Ινδουιστές, όπως και οι Πυθαγόροι, πίστευαν ότι η ίδια η οντότητα μετεσαρκώνεται περίπου 800.000 φορές, δηλαδή ζει 800.000 ζωές. Ο Πλωτίνος στις Ενεάδες εξηγεί τον εξελικτικό σκοπό της μετενσάρκωσης. Αν παρέμενε η ψυχή στο νοητό κόσμο, τότε θα τελούσε σε αδράνεια χωρίς να μπορεί να προσφέρει τίποτα στην καθολική εξέλιξη. Αλλά ούτε και η ίδια θα εμπλουτιζόταν με την πείρα που είναι αναγκαία για να δράσει. Μέσα λοιπόν από δοκιμασίες πάνω στη γη κινητοποιεί και δραστηριοποιεί η ψυχή τις υπάρχουσες γνώσεις της. Εφαρμόζει τις άπειρες δυνατότητές της και επανέρχεται πιο ισχυρή και τελειότερη από όσο πριν κατέλθει. Με την θεωρία της μετενσάρκωσης εξηγούνται πάρα πολλά πράγματα που για τον κοινό άνθρωπο φαίνονται παράλογα. Γιατί να πεθαίνει ένα μικρό παιδί? Γιατί κάποιος να ζει 100 χρόνια αν έχουμε μόνο μια ζωή και άλλος λίγα? Γιατί να γεννιέται κουτσός και τυφλός? Υπάρχει μια αδικία από το Θεό? Γιατί κάποιος να γεννιέται στην Αφρική, σε ένα υποβαθμισμένο χωριό, και γιατί να γεννιέται σε μια πλούσια χώρα? Είναι αδικία αυτό? Αν λοιπόν θεωρήσουμε ότι κάθε ζωή είναι ένας ρόλος μέσα από τον οποίο εξασκούμαστε για να γίνουμε καλύτεροι στην τέχνη της τοπίας, τότε ένας τοπίος θα πρέπει να παίξει πάρα πολλούς ρόλους και να του δοθεί πάρα πολύς χρόνος. Αλλά από τη στιγμή που η ζωή είναι δύσκολη γενικά, μας δίνεται ένα χρονικό διάστημα πεπερασμένο, πηγαίνουμε, αναπαυόμαστε, επανερχόμαστε, όπως ένα παιδί που κάθε μέρα πηγαίνει σε μια τάξη. Σε μια μέρα στο σχολείο, όταν κλείσει μια τάξη, προχωράει στην επόμενη. Η θεωρία της μετενσάρκωσης, της προύπαρξης, περικλειόταν στα ελευσίνια δόγματα, αλλά και στα ορφικά θεσπίσματα. Οι υποψήφιοι μύστες των μυστηρίων δεσμεύονται με διάφορους άρρηκτους όρους να μην αποκαλύψουν ποτέ στους βέβηλους τα μυστικά τους παραδίδοντο. Μέσα από έμεσες διόδους, ωστόσο, ορισμένα από τα μυστικά διατηρήθηκαν μέχρι σήμερα. Οι διδαχές που παραδίδονται στους νεοφώτιστους τους, σε γενικές γραμμές, ήταν οι ακόλουθες. Η ψυχή του ανθρώπου, που στα ελευσίνια μυστήρια συμβολιζόταν από την Περσεφόνη, είναι στην ουσία πνευματική. Η πνευματική της κατοικία βρίσκεται σε ανώτερους κόσμους, όπου, απαλλαγμένη από τα δεσμά της υλικής μορφής και των υλικών αντιλήψεων, λέγεται ότι είναι αληθινά ζωντανή και αυτοεκφραζόμενη. Το υλικό σώμα είναι το σήμα, δηλαδή ο τάφος της ψυχής, ένα ψευδές και προσωρινό πλάσμα, η πηγή όλων των θλίψεων. Για τους φιλοσόφους των Ελευσινίων, η γέννηση στο φυσικό κόσμο είναι θάνατος και η μοναδική αληθινή γέννηση είναι αυτή της πνευματικής ψυχής του ανθρώπου που αναδύεται από τον τάφο της σωματικής φύσης. Εδώ ισχύει αυτό το τραγούδι που λέει και ο Χατζής. Της γειτονιάς μας ο τρελός, στα γεννητρούια πάει και κλαίει, σκηδής πάει και γελάει. Αν είχαμε πραγματική σοφία, έτσι θα τη βλέπαμε. Ο άνθρωπος δεν είναι ούτε καλύτερος ούτε σοφότερος μετά το θάνατο από ό,τι ήταν στην προηγούμενη τη ζωή του. Εάν δεν υπερβεί την επιθυμία του για υλικά αποκτήματα εδώ, θα τη μεταφέρει στον αόρατο κόσμο, όπου επειδή δεν μπορεί να ικανοποιήσει την επιθυμία, θα συνεχίσει σαν ατέλειωτη αγωνία. Αυτή είναι η κόλαση, η πραγματική κόλαση. Να πας εκεί και να μην μπορείς να ικανοποιήσεις τις υλικές σου επιθυμίες. Δεν σε κολλάζει κανείς, δεν υπάρχουν διαβόλοι και τριβόλοι να σε τσιμπάνε και να σε βράσουν στα καζάνια. Αυτά είναι για να τρομάζουμε τα μικρά παιδιά. Η κόλαση του Δάντη είναι η συμβολική περιγραφή των βασανιστήριων, εκείνων που ποτέ δεν ελευθέρωσαν την πνευματική τους φύση από τις αλόγιστες επιθυμίες, τις συνήθειες, τις απόψεις και τους περιορισμούς των προσωπικότητων τους. Ακριβώς όπως ο Νάρκισσος, όταν είδε τον εαυτό του στην επιφάνεια του νερού, και όπως ξέρετε οι αρχαίοι χρησιμοποιούσαν αυτό το άστατο στοιχείο για να συμβολήσουν την παροδικότητα και το απατηλό του υλικού σύμπαντος, το νερό. Ο Νάρκισσος λοιπόν έβλεπε τον εαυτό του να αντανακλάται στην επιφάνεια και έτσι έχασε τη ζωή του προσπαθώντας να αγκαλιάσει αυτή την αντανάκλαση, και ο άνθρωπος σήμερα, βλέποντας μέσα στον καθρέφτη της φύσης και δεχόμενος σαν πραγματικό εαυτό του τον πυλό που βλέπει να αντανακλάται, χάνει την ευκαιρία που του επιτρέπει η σωματική του ζωή να αποκαλύψει τον αόρατο και αθάνατο εαυτό του.
Another thing that I came to realize, in knowing full well that when each and every one of us has the death of our physical body, what happens that's a big surprise is we come into that much greater knowing. It's not a shutting down of awareness, it's actually a great expansion in awareness, reuniting with our higher souls and soulmates and the divine. And it became very clear to me from my journey that eternity of souls is also part and parcel of reincarnation. And I didn't realize it before because as a reductive materialist science, I paid no attention to any scientific books on reincarnation. But in fact, past life memories in children are a very strong data set that prove that mind is far more than brain. The group at the University of Virginia, beginning with Ian Stevenson, now with the work of Jim Tucker, they have more than 4,000 cases, well documented, of children with past life memories, and there's really no other way to explain how those memories got there. And this is reality. This is part of, the hard science on this stuff. And of course, the conventional scientists just ignore it and throw their hands up and kind of run around crying that it can't be, it can't be. Fact is, it's absolutely real. Reincarnation is a huge part of this. For me, it was important because it helped me to reconcile that infinitely powerful, infinitely loving God with the evils and injustices down here in our imperfect world, especially the suffering of innocents like children and animals.
I said, first of all, I don't think you understand that I died of hepatitis from a blood transfusion. Like, it's not my fault I'm here. And he said, your soul knows exactly why you're here. And I started to realize, you know what, it is your soul that gets to run what happens to you. And it is kind of the puppeteer for the puppet that your physical life is. And as soon as I started realizing that and taking responsibility for that, he went ahead and waved his arm, and we're outside in like a gorgeous mountain setting outdoors. I mean, there's mountains, there's pine trees, it was just a beautiful outdoor setting. And he said, come on over here, and we're going to sit down on a rock, and we're going to talk about this. I was like, all right. So we went and we sat down on this rock, and he said, if you don't live long enough in a physical lifetime, you're never going to learn the lessons that souls go to the physical to learn. And I was still kind of like, so what? But when he showed me the other people that I had been, or first he waves his arm, and I see about 3 adults and a lot of toddlers. And he said, do you recognize these people? And I said, I do. And the more I looked at each of them individually, I realized I knew all about those individuals, and it started to dawn on me that those were my past lives. And he said, look at all the children. And I was just like, yeah, that's sad. They all died as children. And he said, right. He said, your soul likes to escape as soon as it can. You really struggle with the physical. And he said, and in this time, you're actually very lucky. It was just really interesting that you could see all those people. But there was a young French girl who was about 19. There was a Native American man who I thought was in his 80s. St. Francis said he happened to be 52 when he died. He was he was a Plains Indian. But he said, really, you never make it to adulthood. He said 3 times out of, 15. He's like, that's just not, that's not cutting it. He said, in this lifetime, You have good parents who love you. My father, in that year, in fact, in 1972, my dad was in California at a wrestling camp. He was the United States wrestling coach for the Olympics in 1980 and 1976, and he was on the 3 teams previous to that. So I was an Air Force brat. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. I had it good. And he's like, you know, I really think you should rethink this and you should consider going back. And I'm like, well, I would, but the problem is that my liver shut down and I came up here to see you. And since I'm here, because the Baptist had taught me about the fiery pits of hell, I thought I really want to cut my losses and stay here where you guys are. And he's just like, well, let me tell you. He said, there's only one place to go when you die. And he said, you're here. And I was just like, well, what about Hitler? And he said, well, there's such a thing as reincarnation. And I'm like, wait, I'm Baptist. We do not believe in reincarnation. And he's like, were those your past lives? Well, yeah, but my mom and dad said that there's no such thing as reincarnation, and he's just like, well, I was Catholic once, and we didn't think so either. But that's not changing the fact.
Είναι καθαρά δαιμονικό φαινόμενο.
Η θέση της Ορθόδοξης Εκκλησίας είναι απολύτως ξεκάθαρη τόσο σε σχέση με την ιδέα της μετενσάρκωσης, όσο και με αυτή καθ' αυτή την αναδρομή σε προηγούμενες ζωές. Εκπρόσωποι της θεωρούν πως η δοξασία του κάρμα και της μετενσάρκωσης καθιστά αδύνατη τη δημιουργία διαπροσωπικών σχέσεων, οι οποίες στηρίζονται στη μοναδικότητα του ανθρώπου, ενώ υποστηρίζουν ότι με την ύπνωση ανοίγει κανείς επικίνδυνα την πόρτα της ψυχής του σε δαιμονικές ενέργειες.
Είναι καθαρά δαιμονικό φαινόμενο. Δηλαδή πρόκειται δηλαδή περί ενέργειας διαβολικής, όπου εκεί ο διάβολος βάζει υποβολές στον άνθρωπο και να φαντάζεται δηλαδή κάποια πράγματα, που όμως δεν ίσχυσαν ποτέ. Είναι παραμύθι, καθαρό παραμύθι. Είναι διαβολική ενέργεια, καθαρά. Η άποψη αυτή την οποία έχει η Εκκλησία στηρίζεται στην αποκάλυψη την οποία έχει κάνει ο ίδιος ο Θεός στον άνθρωπο. Ο ίδιος ο Χριστός έχει πει για το ποια είναι η ψυχή και ποια είναι η εξέλιξη της ψυχής. Όταν λοιπόν λέμε ότι ο άνθρωπος είναι κατ' εικόνα και καθομοίωση Θεού, όταν ο ίδιος ο Χριστός έρχεται το δεύτερο πρόσωπο της Αγίας Τριάδος και σταυρώνεται και θυσιάζεται για τον άνθρωπο, καταλαβαίνουμε πόσο μεγάλη αξία έχει και μοναδικότητα η ψυχή του ανθρώπου.
So when it comes to the topic of reincarnation, there's a lot of alleged evidence that could seem to suggest, at face value, that children are having actual memories of past lives. Most of this research comes from someone named Dr. Ian Stevenson, who was a professor of medicine at the University of Virginia School of Medicine, and he spent over 40 years researching this type of stuff. And a lot of his material was published in this pseudo-scientific journal called the Journal of Scientific Exploration. And it was a culmination of his data that he'd gathered. He'd go and study these reports of children having memories of past lives over in India, and they would sometimes have birthmarks where they were allegedly killed in their past lives. So children, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, they say, I used to be so-and-so. In my past life, I was killed by being stabbed in the neck, on the right side of my neck. They have a scar there. They'd say I was stabbed to death over here and here. My old bedroom used to look like this and that. And they'd go and investigate these children's claims, and sometimes they would check out. They would actually use facial recognition software on these children and demonstrate they had some kind of facial structural similarity to the people they claimed to be in their past lives. Sometimes they would have phobias, like fear of water, for example, or fear of insects if they were bitten in the previous life and killed by an insect, or if they drowned. And so the question is, how can we reconcile this as Christians? Dr. Jim Tucker is another person who comes out with this type of research, and it seems to be pretty compelling at face value. Well, first of all, let's start with the Bible as our standard. Hebrews 9:27 says, "It's appointed unto each man to live once, and after that comes the judgment." So the Bible says very specifically, black and white, as our standard of faith and practice. The Word of God, God Himself, says each person lives once, and after that comes judgment. So anything that happens out in the world needs to be held under the light of Scripture and interpreted in light of the Word of God as our standard, right? So what's our litmus test for something being valid or invalid? How does it compare to Scripture, right? So when we know that the Word of God explicitly condemns the idea of reincarnation as being valid, the question is, okay, now what is the best theoretical model to explain away and understand these accounts of what is happening? A child really be demonically oppressed? Well, the answer is absolutely. There's stories of children who were, 5 years old, 6 years old, 7 years old. They start killing animals. They start wanting to be violent to their brothers and sisters, and they end up growing up to be serial killers. But even from a young age, they were marked by the devil, right? So just like an adult can lie to a child in the natural realm, a spirit can lie to a child in the supernatural realm.
Watch the silver eye on top of the arm. Just watch. Every time it swings, let's pretend we're unraveling a piece of string, little by little. Let's pretend that piece of string is time, unraveling minute by minute, second by second, going backwards, time slipping away. Everything around you, this house, my voice, your mother, all these things are getting further away. We're going back through your life, back to when you started school, when you first learned to walk, when you were just a baby, back to the day you were born, back to the time before this body. I'm no longer speaking to Miles. I'm speaking to the person who has taken residence inside his body. You came uninvited. Tell me if you can hear my voice.
Miles? Miles, what's wrong?
Mommy, I'm scared.
Come here, baby.
Did you really just say that? Nurturing genius.
He's our little prodigy. Miles isn't wired like other kids. His intelligence is off the charts. I don't have an exact score, but it'll be very high. He's special.
Mommy, what's wrong with me?
Miles is having a very difficult time making friends. I want you to tell me everything that you remember.
I don't remember anything.
Miles's brain is extremely well developed. He may need a specialist.
You must be Miles. Miles is dangerous.
I don't feel safe with him in the house.
Oh my God. He's so different now. I feel like I don't know him.
Mommy? Will you always love me? No matter what I do?
He rarely looks at his hands, really, when he's playing the lesson. He has this unerring sense of direction, what we call a sense of keyboard.
Yeah. It almost must make you suspect, or even believe in reincarnation in a way.
Yes, I do believe that he brought this with him. Take a work that he hasn't studied previously, and he will play it through, and he will know the notes absolutely perfectly.
When I first see the score after I remember it.
You have this formidable memory. You can just read a score
Yes, and
remember.
remember.
That's just like that.
Yes.
And so do you need to practice very much?
No.
I think he practices for the very minimum amount. I think because he knows the notes. He knows the notes in his mind as well as his fingers. I can think of nobody at that age that has been such a sensation and been able to play with such brilliance.
Demetrius has astonished audiences from Berlin to New York.
Από τότε που έχεις καθιερωθεί σαν φαινόμενο του πιάνου και μέσα σε αυτές τις εκδηλώσεις θαυμασμού και παραδοχή στο πρόσωπό σου, τι σου έχει κάνει εντύπωση?
Καταρχήν συγκινούμε πολύ που όλος ο κόσμος μου τα κάνει όλα αυτά που λέτε, αλλά εγώ αισθάνομαι σαν ένα απλό παιδί, όπως ένα παιδί, συνηθισμένο.
Δηλαδή όλες αυτές οι εκδηλώσεις δεν σου έχουν κάνει καμία εντύπωση, σαν ένα 12χρονο αγόρι?
Μου κάνουν πολύ μεγάλη εντύπωση, αλλά δεν πάω να είμαι παιδί.
Έχουν πει κάποιοι ότι υπάρχουν παιδιά θαύματα τα οποία τα κατατάσσεις αναγκαστικά στην κατηγορία των παιδιών θαυμάτων, διότι κάνουν κάποια επιτεύγματα πέραν των φυσικών δυνατοτήτων της ηλικίας τους και κατατάσσονται εκεί. Και υπάρχουν και παιδιά θαύματα τα οποία μόνο και μόνο λόγω της ηλικίας τους τα κατατάσσεις στην κατηγορία των παιδιών θαυμάτων, τα οποία όμως ήδη μέσα
δεν είναι
τους,
δική σου περίπτωση.
τα οποία δεν θέλω να μιλήσω, τα οποία ήδη έχουν επιτελέσει στα 12 και στα 13 άγνωστο το πώς ένα έργο σαν να είναι 50, 60 ή 90.
Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome you to this Medical Center Hour. This is a program entitled, Is There Life After Death? 50 Years of Research at UVA. I'm Marcia Day Childress from the Center for Biomedical Ethics and Humanities, and we're delighted to produce the Medical Center Hour and bring it to you each week during the academic semesters. Does some aspect of our personality survive bodily death? Long a philosophical and theological question, in the 20th century, this became the subject of scientific research. 50 years ago, this year in 1967, Dr. Ian Stevenson, then chair of UVA's Department of Psychiatry, created within the department a research unit, now known as the Division of Perceptual Studies, to study what, if anything, of the human personality survives after death. Dr. Stevenson's own research investigated hundreds of accounts of young children who claimed to recall past lives. In our Medical Center Hour today, one of our History of the Health Sciences lectures, faculty from the Division of Perceptual Studies highlights this unit's research initiatives since its founding. They will also preview the unit's priorities and partnerships for its second half-century. By way quickly of some historical background, I'll mention that the Medical Center Hour in past years often addressed the Division of Perceptual Studies research, especially Ian Stevenson's internationally known studies of children with possible past lives. And indeed, Ian presented here multiple times about his work. His research, like that of his successors in the division, is, I think, especially noteworthy for the scientific rigor with which it was performed. Indeed, Dr. Stevenson's standard for impeccable science was extraordinarily high, and it even continuously challenged him in his own work. I'd like to say that today's program is co-presented with the historical collections of the Health Sciences Library and with the Department of Psychiatry and Neurobehavioral Sciences here at UVA.
And mine will be this work that Marcia mentioned that Dr. Stevenson began with young children who report memories of past lives. And as for Ian, once he established the division in 1967, he spent the bulk of the next 40 years focused on these cases of children reporting past life memories. He published numerous books and papers about them. One of his books was reviewed in JAMA, and it was actually reviewed by the book review editor, who wrote, in regard to reincarnation, he has painstakingly and unemotionally collected a detailed series of cases from India, cases in which the evidence is difficult to explain on any other grounds. He has placed on record a large amount of data that cannot be ignored. So to tell you a little bit about this phenomenon, we have now studied over 2,500 cases from around the world. They are easiest to find in cultures with a belief in reincarnation, but they have been found wherever anyone has looked for them. They have been found on all the continents except Antarctica. And they typically involve very young children who spontaneously start talking about a past life and a recent ordinary past life. These kids are not claiming to be Cleopatra or Julius Caesar or anything like that, just describing somebody who lived and died. The one part of the life that's often out of the ordinary is how the previous person died. In over 70% of the cases, the previous person died by unnatural means, meaning murder, suicide, accident, combat, that sort of thing. And often the kids, in fact, in most of the cases that we've investigated, the kids give enough details so that people have been able to confirm that somebody did actually live and die whose life matches the details that the child gave. Now, along with the statements, the children often show emotional or behavioral features that seem connected to the material they're describing, and I'll give you an example of that in a minute. In addition, some children even have birthmarks or birth defects that match wounds, usually the fatal wounds, on the body of the previous person. And Ian studied a lot of these cases. One was a little girl who remembered the life of a man who got his fingers chopped off as he was being murdered, and the little girl was born with her hands looking like that. There was a boy who remembered the life of a boy in another village who had lost the fingers of his right hand in a fodder chopping machine, and the second little boy was born with his hands looking like that, which is quite an unusual defect. And then there was a boy who remembered the life of a man who had been killed by a shotgun blast to the side of his head, and the little boy was born with just a stump for an ear and an underdeveloped right side of his face. Ian also listed 18 cases in which children were born with two birthmarks, ones that matched both the entrance wound and the exit wound on the body of a gunshot victim. Now, in recent years, we have focused more on American cases, and we can now say with certainty that this is not purely a cultural phenomenon that takes place in areas with a belief in reincarnation, because we have lots of American cases, and most of them take place in families who had never believed in reincarnation before the children started talking about a past life.
Here's another recent discovery that's very interesting. All blue-eyed people can be traced back to one ancestor who lived 10,000 years ago near the Black Sea. Guess what, guys? The white skin, the white people, if you will, are the most recent extraterrestrial DNA to come to the planet. Not the only, because hardly anybody on this planet is indigenous human, according to the traditions that we've encountered. But the most recent ET influx is white-skinned people. Everybody with blue eyes can be traced back to one single ancestor. Now, the Casey reading said that Edgar in his past life in Atlantis was known as Ra-Ta, that he was the guy who helped design and build the Great Pyramid with the cooperation of an extraterrestrial group called Ra. Of course, it goes without saying that for those of you who haven't seen this, when they haven't seen it before, there's a gasp in the audience, but you all are well initiated. Edgar Casey and myself, there's obviously a facial similarity there. This is my brother and Casey's first guy, Dr. Ketchum, who got him out there in the world. My father, after a Metallica concert, that's why he's sneering. And the Squire, Edgar Casey's father. My father would only shop at the Squire shop, and everybody called Casey's father the Squire. This is my best friend Jude and Edwin Blumenthal from the Casey tradition, one of his principal investors. Jude and I did marvelous music together in high school, at least we thought so at the time. And this is my friend from college, Christopher, and his corresponding reincarnation, Morton Blumenthal. This is my good friend from college, Angelica, and this is Edgar's wife, Gertrude. These are like the only people I'm still in contact with from high school and college. I mean, you have to understand, these are not just random people from my life. These are like some of my closest associates and friends. And then when you find out that they're the same people as in Edgar's circle, it's very, very surprising. The interesting aspect of how I fit in, for those of you who haven't seen this before, is that there is a remarkable similarity between myself, and the historical figure Edgar Cayce, who was a 20th century mystic and psychic, who could be given someone's name and address, and through nothing else but that information he was able to give their medical problems and a treatment without knowing anything about them. All he knows is their name and address, and they sit down in their house, thousands of miles away potentially. He sits down, he goes into a trance, he starts speaking, he doesn't remember anything that he says, and when he wakes up, the guy who wrote it down says, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing because, we found out that this person has leukemia, and you said they have leukemia in your reading," and this was done over 14,000 times. So what you see here is a comparison between Cayce's astrology on the inside and my astrology on the outside. And what you see here is Sun over Sun, Venus over Venus, Mars over Mars, Moon over Moon. There's all these correlations between the planets. Superficially, they're in the same sign. You can see that the probability just of hitting the same sign, Pisces, Taurus, Capricorn, year of the ox, the same year of the Chinese zodiac, 1 out of 12, and the moon in the same degree, 1 out of 360. The likelihood of all this happening by chance is really, really unusual, especially because the only time that you get this close of an alignment with Cayce's birth planets, it only happens once in 127 years after he dies, which happens to be the exact time that I was born. It's a coincidence. And of course, there wouldn't be any facial similarity. That would be too obvious. So we can't give you that. You guys have probably seen this before, most of you, but obviously there's a tremendous facial similarity. You can see an extraordinary likeness. In fact, many people have said it's like the same guy, just put on a hat. And in Zurich, somebody actually gave me a bowler hat, and I recreated the famous slack-jawed pose.